Right, hello everyone, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. I'm just going to have a bit of a laid back ramble in this video. I want to talk about the video game The Last of Us parts 1 and part 2. I've just played both games back to back, so I thought I'd have a little bit of a ramble. I thought I'd dig into them, talk about the plot, talk about the gameplay, talk about the themes, talk about the woke culture and how it affected these games and so on and so forth. As I'm sure you are probably aware, if you are watching this video, The Last of Us Part 2 came out 4 years ago in 2020, caused a bit of a stir because it was very, very different to the first game. It introduced a lot of lesbian themes and transgender themes, and a lot of people targeted it as a all-round general complaint about video games. So I thought I'd ramble on about that, basically. And a lot of people, first of all, they may say, oh my God, what are you doing? Playing video games? That's so degenerate. Blah, 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 blah. You should be working. You should be self-improving. You should be, video games are lazy and only losers play video games and so on and so forth. Okay, well, first of all, I don't actually play that many video games. I play video games like once or twice a year. I'm not really actually that into them, partly because video games these days are rubbish, right? I never had a games console when I was a kid. I did buy an Xbox 360 about 10 years ago, and I played games for like a year and a half solid, like a lot of games, because they had a lot of great games back then, But then I kind of burned myself out, and I thought, well, I've done that now. I've played video games, and the games industry went down from that point onwards. As we all know, they just make a couple of big games now, and then they sell add-ons to the games, and they make a lot of money out of live online stuff and this, that, and the other. Like the big AAA games are just it's just not as exciting as it was 10 years ago, and it's all contaminated with woke culture. So I'm not really a very big gamer, but I do like to just chill out every now and again and just kill a few monsters on the computer, right? And there is a lot of criticism of this kind of behavior. I think this is part of a self-help, how can I say this? It's not a trap, it's not a paradox, I'm not really sure what it is, but let me describe this by analogy to you, right? Let's say you're in a prison, okay, and everything's fine and you're comfortable in this prison, right? And then the prison guards, they invite a whole bunch of new prisoners in and they change all the rules, and all of a sudden the prison is very violent and it's overcrowded and it's rubbish, right? And so then you start complaining to the prison guards and you're like, why have you let all these crazy people in? Why have you changed all the rules? Everything's terrible now. And the prison guards, they don't like this. So then all of a sudden pops up this one prisoner who's actually working for the prison guards, but he's pretending that he's not. He's pretending that he's a little bit of a rebel, and he's rebelling against the prison guards. And this prisoner says to you, look, don't worry about the prison guards. What we got to do is we got to self-improve, and we got to work harder, and then we can move to a different section of the prison, and then we'll have a comfortable life, right? So you go along with him and you listen to him because his advice is good. And if you do follow his advice, then you can move to a different section of the prison and your life will be better, right? Or at least your life will return to what it was before the prison guards started messing up the prison, okay? So this guy here, this is basically your Jordan Peterson type character, your self-improvement guru. The internet is full of these types of people. They are giving, on the surface, what is kind of good advice. They're saying, work harder, Goyim, work harder, peasant, work harder, prisoner, slave, and then you'll get to a better part of the prison. And they're not wrong in this advice. You do have to work harder to get to a better part of the prison. Why? Because the prison's changed, okay? Back in the 60s or the 70s or even the 80s, you could just work an ordinary job and you could get a house and you could have a car and you could have a wife and you'd do all right on a basic wage. Okay? You can't do that anymore. Now if you're working a minimum wage, either in England or in America, you're screwed, right? You can't afford anything. You're basically like living in a third world, right? So the rules of the prison have changed, and the self-help guru is now, he's just telling you to work harder to move to a different part of the prison. He's not wrong in this advice. But the problem is, what you have to understand, that if he is encouraging you, if he, at the same time that he's giving you this advice, he's telling you also, don't get politically organized, then you can understand that actually he is working for the establishment. And his advice is actually just him telling you work harder. He's not actually your friend. His advice isn't wrong. You do have to work harder to get away from your shitty minimum wage third world existence, but he's working for the establishment because he's telling you not to get politically organized. If it was genuine self-help advice, he'd be telling you work harder and get politically organized. That's good self-help advice. But the self-help advice that says, don't blame the world, blame yourself, this is poison. This is like boomer advice, essentially. This goes all the way back to the Victorian age, by the way. I mean, the self-help movement itself is named after a book called Self-Help, which was released in the late Victorian period by a guy called Smiley, I think. Very popular in Japan, by the way, when they had the Meiji Restoration, and basically Japan just kind of industrialized and rebuilt itself. They took a lot of inspiration from this book. So it's like you have these evil people, they're destroying your country, they're driving you into poverty, and then they just tell you, don't blame us, work harder, take responsibility. And it's like, well, you're kind of right, I kind of do have to work harder and take responsibility, but only because you've destroyed the flipping country. Okay? So always remember that whenever anybody comes up to you and they say, why are you playing video games? Why are you wasting your time playing video games? You should be doing something more productive with your time. It's like, well, God, sorry for just chilling out, right? I'm sorry for just like chilling out and playing a video game and just relaxing, right? I'm sorry for relaxing. I'm sorry for watching movies. I'm sorry for playing a video game. I'm sorry for just, I don't know, reading a fantasy novel, or just relaxing, doing something which is non-productive, something which is just entertainment, something which is not just me trying to better myself. It's just passing the time in a pleasurable way. You know what I mean? I'm really, really sorry for having that relaxation time. Maybe I don't actually just want to work 50, 60 hours a week. Maybe once I've done a full day's work, sometimes I just want to come home and chill out, So always remember that. Whenever anybody complains, oh, you're playing video games, it's a mistake. Because the fact of the matter is that in the 60s, the boomers could work full days a week, and they could come home and they could chill out. They didn't have to go to the gym because the food was healthier, right? The food was healthier, and I guess maybe people walked to work, or the I don't know. They were just healthier in general, I think. And women didn't demand that you had this big muscular body and a six-pack and what have you. They didn't demand this. If you were an ordinary guy, you were an ordinary guy. And you could get a girl that wasn't fat, right? And life was good. But now that it does seem like we live in an age of overbearing like pressure, like moral pressure to self-improve. Like, oh, you're so lazy. You're just a lazy gamer. You should be, bettering yourself. So don't listen to these assholes. It's okay to chill out every now and again and play a video game. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So anyway, that's my intro. That's kind of how I feel about video games, And so let's talk about The Last of Us. Great game, old game. I like it though just because of the gameplay, right? I like the duck and cover type gameplay. I like sneaking around and stabbing people and cutting their throats and sneaking around I like the intense, because The Last of Us is obviously a zombie survivalist type duck and cover video game. So you're killing humans, but you're also fighting zombies. It's kind of like basically a horror game. So you have these scenes where you're like sneaking through a building and you've got these monsters and you're trying to hide from them and this, that, and it's intense. It's a great game. It's kind of almost my favorite type of game. My real favorite game would be Max Payne, especially the only Max Payne game I've played, which is, I think it's number 3, where he goes to Brazil, and that game is like 10, maybe 15 hours long to play, and it's just good cinematic sequences and then just action, bam, 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 bang. That's a great game. This game, The Last of Us, it's a little bit too long for me because it is like a survivalist type game. So you've got to spend like half the game just running around picking up bits and bobs so that you can build weapons and things like this to help you fight. That's kind of a bit of a drag. That is a terrible symptom of modern day games, that they make these things so long to play. In my mind, a game should be in my mind, really, the perfect game is like the old school Mario Brothers or Sonic the Hedgehog type game, where you just play and you complete the thing in an hour, right? And you get 3 lives, and you can't save the game in the middle, so you've got to just sit down, and you have to have like an intense, focused, concentrated experience that lasts, for an hour. Basically, hour and a half. Like I was never good at Super Mario Brothers, but I always had like a respect for. You'd see these guys and they'd go in like the arcade, and they just put 20p in and then they play it for 40 minutes, complete it, walk off, like bang, done it. It's like an intense focus, concentration, which I think is fantastic. But a lot of video games these days, the majority of them are just lazy. It's just lazy. It's like passing the time. Like, okay, I've got to go from here to there, and I've got to jump up here and go through that window and climb there and pick this thing up, and then there's a cinematic sequence, and then I've got to kind of move over here, and then finally there's an action sequence. And the action sequences are quite intense, but there's such a gap in between them, which is a drag. So that would be my major criticism of The Last of Us, that you don't need these major gaps. It needs to be squashed down. I don't know how they would do it, because like I say, it is a survivalist type game where you pick up bits and bobs to create your own weapons. But you could mix that with the action sequences. It already is kind of mixed with the action sequences anyway. So you could just mix it more. And that would be a major improvement. The same goes for Red Dead Redemption. Apparently, like, you spend 20 hours in that game just riding a horse, going wherever it is you're going. Just going from one action sequence to the next. You got to ride your horse for 20. I mean, and I understand it's a sandbox game, so there are all kinds of incidents along the way, and it's kind of like more open, and you're kind of like more free, I suppose, to choose where you're going to go and what you're going to do. So it's kind of like immersive, and you kind of get lost in the experience. I mean, I guess, it's a type of game. It's a type of gaming experience. I just don't think it's really the best. I think the original arcade games nailed it, basically. And, I mean, funny enough, I don't even play arcade games. I could probably get one on PlayStation and play it. I mean, they're just not popular anymore, are they, those types of games? So maybe I'm a massive hypocrite for saying this, but that should be the ideal, like an intense experience instead of a long drawn out experience. But I think like the way that entertainment is going in general in the 21st century, it's just content, and it's just all about keeping somebody occupied and staring at the screen, essentially. That's what Netflix is all about. Netflix is just content. It's just garbage. Churn out the garbage, keep people watching. It's not about creating great movies or great cinematic experiences. It's just about filling content. Same with a lot of YouTube. Same with TikTok. Same with that's it. A lot of entertainment experiences. It's just trash. It's pulp. Churn it out. It's time filler. It's people get home from work, they're tired, they don't want to think about anything, so they just want to switch the flipping Netflix on and watch it so they can switch their brains off. That's all it is. It's garbage. And I think that's kind of disgusting, and it's kind of low IQ. And I don't know who watches that kind of stuff. I don't watch. I actually, for Netflix, to be honest, I do go on it sometimes. I usually sometimes I'll go on for a month, look at the critically acclaimed section, watch a bunch of those videos, and then I'll turn it off. So maybe I do Netflix like 1 or 2 months a year, something like that. That's kind of like my Netflix habit. Generally speaking, try and stay away from it because mostly it's garbage. There's nothing on there worth watching. I mean, generally speaking, like when it comes to entertainment, personally, I'm more attracted to I've gone into the habit recently of just watching classic movies and watching the same movie like 2-3 times in a row, which is something I never thought that I would do, to be honest with you. I always thought I'd heard about people that did that kind of thing. You've seen. Well, it reminds me of what's that movie? Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz and the fat guy, Nick Frost character, and he's talking about like all these great movies like Die Hard and Point Break, and obviously he's watched them over and over again. And I always kind of look down on that. It's like, man, you just watch the same movie over and over again. But I kind of started to sympathize with that now, because like if it's a great movie, why not watch it 2, 3, 4 times? Right? I mean, obviously you can't watch it every year, but I mean, if you watched it like a few years ago, why not come back and watch it again? You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather watch a really, really great classic movie 2, 3, 4 times than watch some trashy movie which is just shit and not enjoyable. The problem is, of course, in order to find the good movies, you've got to filter through so much trash to find the gems. But then I guess once you've found a gem of a movie, why not watch it again? Because you've had to filter through so much garbage to find a great movie. Do you know what I mean? So I guess my cinematic habits are changing in a way. Anyway, point being, there's a lot of when it comes to 21st century entertainment, there's a lot of garbage out there. And video games are the same, a lot of space. And that would be my number one criticism of The Last of Us. Just that especially like playing the second one. The first one's really good. The first one is just such a classic game. The second one is great gameplay, kind of weird plot, very dark, but not a plot that can be dismissed altogether. Like the tranny part can be dismissed. And obviously there's a lesbian thing going on there. So it is a very kind of left-wing woke plot, but nonetheless an interesting plot. There's something to it. But despite all that, as a general all-round criticism, playing it through again, it's like, man, this is a long game. And a lot of the cinematic sequences are a little bit unnecessary. It's too bloated. It should have been stripped down to 20 hours, and then it would have been like a diamond. But anyway, let's get into it. What are we in? 20 minutes now. Okay, so let's get into it. What is The Last of Us? So basically, we'll do the first. Basically, I'll go through the plot of each game. I'll just go through the whole thing and talk about it along the way. So you start off with a brilliant introduction. First game, you wake up. You're this young teenage girl. There's something on the news about a disaster. You hear some bombs going off in the background and police sirens, and it's kind of middle of the night, and it's weird, and you go to find your dad. He's not there. You're in the house alone, and then you're walking around, and then all of a sudden there's a noise outside, and there's your neighbor, and he's bashing on the window, and he's turned into a zombie, and then your dad turns up and he rescues you, and like, oh my god, I mean, it's really good. It's really well done. Fantastic introduction to a character. It makes you, puts you in the moment, you know what I mean? Establishes the relationship between daughter and father straight away, you know, and then you get in the car with your father and his brother, right? The father's Joel's like the main character, the brother's called Tom. You're driving through the town, the car crashes, there's people running, screaming, there's zombies, you manage to escape, and the girl ends up getting shot, right? And then you skip forward, and it's 20 years later, and there's Joel, and he's like this hardened, older, tough, kind of grizzled smuggler, cynical smuggler type guy, just trying to survive. But you care for him straight away, right? You care for his character. You see where he's coming from straight away. So it's a brilliant introduction. Absolutely brilliant. Spot on. Now, straight away, we've got the feminist influence here, because 20 years later, Joel's there. He's in his room. Girlfriend turns up. Girlfriend is like tough boss girl, smuggler girl. She's just been in a fight, but she beat up whoever tried to kill her. And it's like, okay. And then she wants to go and like get the guns. And basically, she's bossing Joel around, right? So straight away in this game, you've got the tough girl bossing around the boyfriend, who's supposed to be the main character. And it's like, oh man, you know, okay, like whatever, I guess we'll just go along with it. It kind of reminded me of The Witcher, to be honest with you. I tried playing The Witcher, I couldn't be bothered with it. Like, there's a whole generation of young men out there who thought that Geralt was their big hero, like this alpha male. But if you actually play the famous, is it Witcher number 3 or whatever? You look at the opening scene and Geralt's like in the bath, chilling out. And then his bitch of a girlfriend, like, what does she do? She like makes a spell or something, drops us like a snake in the bath or some kind of animal in the bath, and she like wakes him up. She's like, go and train Ciri. And he's like, oh yes, master. So I don't know, man, what can I say? Woke culture, feminist culture, but it's kind of, compared to the shit that we got to deal with these days, it seems kind of tame. But anyway, so Joel goes off following his girlfriend to get some guns with some deal that's gone bad. They end up shooting some people, blah blah blah. They meet this crew of people called the Fireflies. They make a deal. They got to get this girl out of the city to the meeting point, and then they get their guns. Okay, Joel doesn't want to do it, but they go along with it. His girlfriend gets bit along the way. They go to the meeting. The people aren't there to meet them, and they find out along the way that this girl, Ellie, she's been bitten by the zombies, right? By the way, like a lot of zombie movies, zombie games or whatever, it's all biological. It's got nothing supernatural in it. It's a disease, right? People have basically turned into these like I don't know what they have, like spores, and if you breathe the spores in, you get the disease, or if you get bitten, you get the disease, and you turn into like a walking mushroom or something. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. But she's immune, and she's like the first human to be immune. So what you have is this post-apocalyptic situation, right, where Joel and his girlfriend, they're living in this city, but it's ruled over by the army, and they're scrubbling around in the dark trying to get like food and shit just to survive, because it's all rationing and this, that, and the other. And then there's this other rebel group which is kind of fighting against the army for freedom or whatever, and they want to get the girl so they can make a vaccine so they can save everyone. So there's a kind of like rebellious theme going on, which I don't know, I mean, that's typical post-apocalyptic thing. It kind of doesn't really make any sense to me, because like, how can you have a fascist dictatorship in a post-apocalyptic world where anybody could just walk off and do their own thing? But whatever, not a big point. Anyway, so the girlfriend's bit, she's gonna die, and then Joel ends up with the girl. He doesn't really want to rescue her. He's not interested in the vaccine. He's not interested in helping her. But he just kind of goes along with it, right? So he goes along with it. He decides to take the girl to see his brother because his brother knows the Fireflies and he can help out. So it's like, okay. So then we get the first dose of gayness, right? Because they manage to get out of the city and they go to this guy who's going to help them. He owes Joel a favor. And so you're shooting a whole bunch of zombies and this, that, and the other. It's great fun, by the way. The whole game, like all the way up to this point, great fun, good game, nice duck and covering, nice hiding from the police, shooting the zombies, good action sequences, just brilliant game. You meet the guy, turns out he's gay, and that's it, just this one gay guy living in a village all by himself, right? He helps you get the car, the car crashes later on, you meet up with this black fella and his kid, you rescue them, they die, eventually you get to you get to meet Tom. Joel wants to give the girl away to Tom, but there's a back and forth, and in the end Joel says, no, alright, I'll take the girl to the Fireflies myself. So you got the character progression, okay? Joel doesn't like the girl in the beginning, obviously she reminds him of his daughter, and there's a conflict there, and then they overcome it, and they become friends, and it's like, oh, it's okay, so it's good, it's nice. And then Joel ends up getting injured. Ellie's got to look after him. There's a great sequence where she gets kidnapped by this psycho guy who wants to like rape her and cannibalize her, and then she escapes, and she's going through the snow by herself. All she's got is a knife. And there's all these guys with guns trying to kill her, but it's snowing, so it's like there's not a lot of vision, and she's got to hide, and it's great, brilliant game, spot on, good stuff, good. It's very good how you get to play both characters, good. And then you get to the end, you get to the hospital, the Fireflies get her. Now they both get knocked out, and then they get rescued by the Fireflies. Joel wakes up and he's told, right, we're going to operate to make this vaccine. But in order to get it done, they've got to cut her brain. They've got to kill her, right? Because they've got to cut her head up and to get to the thing which is on her brain, right? So they can make this vaccine. Joel goes crazy, kills the whole hospital, rescues her. And here you have it's kind of like the twist at the end of the game, the twist at the end of the plot, which kind of sets up the second game, right? It's the moral conundrum, and it's a good one. It's good. It's kind of grey. It's kind of like, ooh, what would you do in that situation? My take on it is that the Fireflies were in the wrong, okay? Because they should have given them the choice. And if they'd have given, and at the end of the day, it's Ellie's choice. It's not Joel's choice. It's her life. It's her immunity. She can decide whether or not she wants to sacrifice herself to create a vaccine or not. That's her choice. So they should have let her choose. And if they'd have let her choose, she probably would have said yes, and there wouldn't have been anything Joel could have done about it. And that would have been the end of the game, right? But they didn't let her choose. So Joel rescued her, killed all the Fireflies, and then he lied to her and told her that, they couldn't make the vaccine and they didn't need you and this, that, and the other. And she knew that something was wrong. She knew it was fucked up, but she just kind of went along with it because by this point they bonded like father and daughter, right? So it's a great little story. I think it's a really well written, good story. That's why it's such a classic game. Came out in 2013, 2014, something like that. Classic, famous game. Everybody loved it. Good emotional impact. Great gameplay. Brilliant. Okay? Everyone was waiting for the follow-up. The follow-up comes out 6-7 years later, and then it's all woke, and everybody complained. Comes out in 2020, and everybody fucking complained. Everybody hated it, right? So, okay, so what went wrong in the second game? First of all, they turned Ellie gay, right? Now, okay, so the first scene, what happens? She wakes up. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, first scene, she wakes up. She's got to go and go on patrol, right? They're staying in this town in the mountains run by her brother, and the brother also bossed around by his boss girl friend, who's at the actual run. So the town's actually built by and run by a woman, right? So both Joel and his brother, the two tough alpha males in the game, they've both bossed around by their girlfriends, but whatever, small point. Yeah, she wakes up, she's got to go on patrol, and apparently she's kissed the girl, right? And then she's going on patrol with this girl, this Jewish girl that she kissed. So she's a lesbian. They turned Ellie into a lesbian, right? In the first game, she's this cute 14-year-old, and now she's turned into a lesbian. Now, apparently part of this is dealt with in the expansion pack, which I haven't actually played. But the background plot for Ellie is that she got bitten. This is what is explained in the first game. But she got bitten because she snuck out of the city with a friend. They both got chased by zombies. They killed the zombies. They both got bitten. They were both just gonna go crazy together. But only her friend went crazy, and Ellie obviously was immune. So this is one of the strong themes, right? She's got survivor's guilt. It's like, my friend died, but I didn't, therefore I'm guilty. I have absolutely no understanding of this whatsoever. It's like psychologically not something I've ever experienced. I can't get my head around it, but I mean, I guess it's a thing that happens. So, but in the expansion pack, she kissed the girl. So she was already a bit of a lesbian, and it's not really explained why. But I guess that gets mixed in with her survival guilt. And so anyway, she's a lesbian. Okay, whatever. I mean, it wouldn't be a big deal. To be honest with you, I wouldn't even mind the whole lesbian stuff. I wouldn't like it, but I don't mind it. The real problem with the game is that they just double down on it so much. And they introduce the transsexual later on. And it's like, man, you couldn't just have a lesbian. You had to make it flipping tranny as well, you know? But it is obviously totally unrealistic. I mean, it's totally unrealistic that you'd have boss girls in a post-apocalyptic world. But it's also unrealistic that that lesbianism would be tolerated in that kind of world, because you need to have kids. Like lesbianism and gayness, this is something which is something for rich urbanites in a dystopian 21st century society. It's not something for a post-apocalyptic world where people are scrabbling around trying to survive zombies and cannibals and crazy people. In a world like that, a female would be expected to have children, especially a female like Ellie who has immunity. You know? So I mean, I'm just saying, like, if I was going to rewrite this story, you could, and you wanted to, you should have given, this is part of the problem. They don't give a reason for her lesbianism. She just is a lesbian. And we all know that they're lesbians because of some traumatic event. Usually they got abused by a man or something like this, right? But this is created by woke people, so they just say that, oh, you know, she's just gay because she's just gay, and that's just the way it is. And it's like, well, you know, you could have given her a reason for her gayness, and a good reason could have been daddy issues. That would be the obvious one, right? So she's got the survivor guilt, and also perhaps maybe you could have done something that way, like Joel's like, oh, you got to get pregnant, right? You got to have babies, because that would be the natural thing for her to do. She's immune, so she should have children. At least, if she's not going to sacrifice herself to create a vaccine, she could at least have kids, right? And spread the immunity to her children, right? So you could have had like peer pressure put on top of her to do that, and she rebels against that by becoming a lesbian. And that could have created a further rift between her and Joel. Because that's part of the plot here, by the way. She's fallen out with Joel, right? Because she knows that he lied to her, and Joel took away her ability to choose whether she sacrifices herself or not, right? So I don't know. I mean, if I was going to rewrite it, I'd do something like that, to be honest with you, to explain her rejection of men. But whatever. So anyway, so they go out, and blah blah blah. This happens now. Like I just said, Joel shot up this hospital to rescue Ellie in the first game, right? So in the second game, the daughter of the doctor who was going to perform the operation, her name is Abby. She's like this giant blonde beast of a woman with big muscles, right? This big muscly woman. And she comes to take revenge. Captures Joel, kills him, and they let Ellie and they let Tom live, right? Now, from a moral point of view here, because for me, whenever I'm looking at any kind of plot, it's all about morality. You judge who is right, who's in the wrong, and you get a feel for it, and that's what every story is for me. That's the way I read any story. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate philosophical question is, what should I do? All this metaphysical stuff about, is there a God, is there not a God? I mean, that's the ultimate metaphysical question, right? I mean, it's a good question, but it's also ultimately, it boils down to a moral question. Because is there a God? If there is a God, it turns out you should serve him. So it's even with a question like that, it's a question like, what should I do? And the same goes for any theory of evolution or any theory of the Big Bang or any kind of metaphysical thing. The ultimate question is, what should I do? And the same goes for stories. Stories are instruction manuals. They're telling you, well, this person did this and this person did that, and the consequences were X, Y, and Z. It's a guidebook, which is meant to inspire you to action. I mean, that's just the way I read stories anyway. You see people's mistakes, you see their weaknesses, you see why they did what they did, and you think, oh man, that was the wrong thing to do, or yeah, that was the right thing to do, and you kind of learn from it. So, like I said, first game, difficult moral decision. That's what it makes it interesting. That's why the first game was good, because you got a genuinely difficult moral decision right at the end of the game. Joel gets knocked out, he wakes up, and they tell him that they're going to cut Ellie open to make this vaccine. They're going to kill her. And he's like, you can't do that. And they're like, it's a tough choice, but we got to do this for humanity. We got to create a vaccine. And he's like, well, you didn't ask me and you didn't ask her. You're just killing her. It's not right. And I think he was right. And it's a moral conundrum, because, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, for the good of humanity. Well, I don't know. I guess it's kind of like that old question: would you torture one small little animal, like, for all of eternity if it made everybody happy? And I'd say no. You wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. It's cruel. And the cruelty of that one act would just contaminate everything. So, actions have consequences, even for the greater good. So essentially, at the end of the day, they should have asked her, basically. Is what I'm trying to say here. So I think Joel's got the moral high ground, and Abby's wrong at the end of the day, because that's what this whole game is about. It's a very grey game, and in the game you get to play both characters. You get to play the protagonist and the antagonist, which is what is special about the game, right? A lot of people didn't like that. Like, you get halfway through the game playing Ellie, and then you switch to Abby. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people, they playing this game live on YouTube or whatever, and they groaned, oh my god. But I actually thought it was kind of clever that you show both sides of the story, and it's morally grey. Both sides have kind of got a point, and they're both kind of right and they're both kind of wrong, and yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting story. It can't just be dismissed as left-wing nonsense. I think it's incomplete. I think it's imperfect. I think it needs to be rewritten to flush out a lot of the garbage and just to refine it. But I do think there is a great story in there. I don't know. When it comes to a story, any movie, that's the way I think about it. I first of all, I think of the moral implications. Second, I always think, like, how would I rewrite it and make it better? I don't know. That's just the way I think about this stuff. But I think there is a great story in there. It's just they fudged it, basically. So so what happens is Abby, I think, morally is in the wrong because, like I say, Joel had a right to rescue Ellie, and the Fireflies should have given them the choice. Okay, but anyway, she's angry because they killed the father, and essentially the whole story is like two daughters angry about their fathers being killed. Essentially, they both got daddy issues. Or they're both trying to get revenge for their fathers, essentially. So it's kind of interesting. They're kind of very similar to each other. They're kind of like a mirror to each other. So like I say, an interesting story. But she comes because Joel's killed her father. Now, she's in the wrong here, in my opinion, because first of all, like I've just said like 3 times in a row now, they should have given Ellie the choice. But secondly, because Joel ends up rescuing her. The way things play out, she's going to try and get Joel. She gets attacked by a horde of zombies. She's going to get killed. Joel rescues her. In my opinion, that should have been a reset. That should have been, okay, you saved my life. That's it. I know you killed my dad, but you saved my life, and I can't go through with this now. So I'm going to have to let you go. Something like that. Or maybe punch him in the face or whatever, but to beat a man to death after he saved your life, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not good. You know, it's snidey. It's bad. So that's a fault. That's a major fault against Abby. But nonetheless, to her credit, actually you could say it's to her credit. It's kind of a stupidity, to be honest with you, which is just dumb. Because it ends up getting all of her friends killed, right? But she lets Ellie and Tom live, right? And then the rest of the game is Ellie and Tom getting revenge against Abby. So, number 1, shouldn't have killed Joel because he saved your life. Number 2, if you're going to be a psychopathic, like if you're going to do it properly. And kill Ellie and kill Tom and get the thing done so that nobody knows you were there. Nobody knows what happens. They're dead. You haven't left any trace. And you get away with it. And you get away clean. That's what they should have done. But stupidly, she's like, nah, we'll just leave it. Forget it. We've got our revenge. And we're going back. They're not part of it. And it's like, well, kind of. You're going to get your friends killed. Because there's going to be a retaliation. So it's just dumb. It's just dumb. Right? So that's the second point. And then the third point, there's no, and this is just like a general criticism of the whole of the second game. Like they don't bring out the fact that, because they've got Ellie, she's right there, they captured her, right? She goes in to rescue Joel and they grab her, right? They could have taken her back to Seattle with them and they could have got the vaccine, right? They could have finished the job. There's no conversation in the whole game about the fact that Ellie is immune and she has the ability to save mankind. It's like that's just forgotten. And I understand that from like, I get it that you put that to the background because the emotional focus of the story is on these two girls fighting each other because their fathers have been killed. Like I kind of get it, but it is like it's there, you know, and they just ignored it. And all of those fireflies that came in, because Abby's not alone, she's with a group of people, they would have all known that she's got the immunity, and they just let her go. When they could have just grabbed her and taken her back to Seattle and killed her and got the flipping vaccine. And so it just doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's a crazy story. It's like I say, there is a great story there, but it should have been rewritten. If I had to rewrite it, because Abby ends up, I mean, this is a major disagreement with the story. I'm jumping ahead a bit here, but Abby ends up like rejecting everything and running off with this transgender kid. So she turns against all of her friends and her allies and her life and everything. There should have been an underlying conflict with her boss, and there wasn't. So the story does not make sense. Okay, I'm jumping ahead here, but the story does not make sense for her to reject all of her friends and run off with some kid that she's just met. So there should have been an underlying conflict with her boss and with her way of life in Seattle. And perhaps that underlying conflict could have been the fact that she was forbidden to get revenge for her father or something like that. And so she could have rebelled against and then gone and killed Joel and then had no interest in the vaccine. And maybe she was just alone when she did it. And then afterwards Ellie goes to get her or something like that. I don't know, but it should have been rewritten. It should have been written in a different way. That's my feeling. So anyway, that's the story. They killed Joel. The other point here, okay, the entire, regardless of all the lesbianism and whatever, one of the huge reasons why the fan base had a massive problem with this game was because they killed Joel, right? Killed the main character. Everybody complained about it. I think it's one of the best parts of the game. People complained and they said, oh, you're replacing the male character with the young female character. Okay, yeah, it's like get rid of the old white man and replace it with the girl boss. Yeah, all right. I mean, I see what you're saying, but what you're missing is the fact that in order to make any kind of story work, there has to be a sacrifice. You have to kill a main character, and it has to be somebody that the audience likes. And it's by making that sacrifice that you get an emotional investment in the game or the story. And if you don't make the sacrifice, there's no emotional investment. And the story just becomes facile and shallow and cartoonish and boring because it's too safe. Classic example being superhero movies. The superheroes never die. And so you just, it's like, well, whatever, dude. Like, whatever happens doesn't matter, right? Another example would be The Boys. I'm just saying this recently, the TV series, just because it come out, it's one of the few good things that have come out recently. First couple of seasons, kind of exciting. Now it's boring. Why? Because you got Frenchie, you got the black dude, you got the English dude, and you got the American guy. You got these four, and then you got the blonde girlfriend, and then you got some other, and none of them die. Like the few characters die, but the main ones, they stay there. And because they're there, they've got this plot armor, and they're kind of invincible, no matter how dangerous the situations are that they get into. It's like, well, it's freaking boring then, isn't it? Like, it's boring. They're not going to die. Well, the writers are just going to introduce some character and then some random new character in the next season, and they'll kill that person off as a sacrifice. And it's like, well, it's not a good enough sacrifice. I want one of the main characters to die. I want to see someone's head get smashed in with a hammer or something. Because if they don't die, then the world is safe. That universe is safe. That story is safe, and there's no risk, and none of the characters are in any danger, and so it's not exciting. It's just boring. So you have to kill the main characters. I mean, Game of Thrones, great example. Why did people like Game of Thrones? Because in the very first season, they killed off two of the main characters, Ned Stark and that barbarian guy. Boom, boom, dead. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? What's going on? Right? And that continued all the way until the last season, which was just boring. If they'd have put me in charge of the last season, I would have killed everyone. That's Greek tragedy. The Greeks understood this. Two types of theatre, comedy and tragedy. Comedy, everything's good and someone gets married. Tragedy, everybody dies. It's tragic. You kill everyone, right? Macbeth or whatever. And the audience is like, oh my God, right? That would have been the easy, straightforward way. But instead, like, a few characters died, but you ended the whole series and most of them are still alive, and it's like, boring. I would have slaughtered a lot of them. So, I don't know, man. There's like a certain type of audience they don't like to see the main characters killed. I had a massive argument with an American about this, a Mexican American, about this in regard to the third Aliens film. I had an argument with a guy about this like 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. But, you know, like the first Alien film, great film. Aliens, great film. You got Ripley. At the end of the film, you got Ripley, the little girl, and the bloke, and they escape in the spaceship. And then in Alien 3, they land on the prison planet. The little girl's dead, and the bloke is dead, and Ripley's all alone, and there's an alien there, and it's a big fight, right? I thought it was great. This Mexican guy I was talking to was like, no, you don't understand. They killed the character. It's terrible writing. They shouldn't have killed the little girl. You don't understand how stories are written. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's great. Kill the characters. Kill the character. Otherwise, it's boring. It's like, oh, we've got plot armor. But there are a lot of people out there that think like this. A lot of low IQ people. They have this mentality of, there's a character and it's had character development and you've built up the character and he's on a journey and you can't just kill them off. It's like, what? I don't know. But there are people out there that watch Marvel superhero movies and they enjoy them. So, you know, I guess a lot of the audience, they were upset that Joel got killed, but killing Joel was fantastic. Brilliant move. Well done. Congratulations. Yes, there's a dark theme of the man gets killed and the girl takes over. Girl boss theme. Okay, whatever. I'm not even against girl boss. I'm not even against it. You know, I don't have any problem with Ripley. I don't have any problem with Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. If it works, it works. You know, I guess it's like one of those things like, it's kind of like a joke, and it's like the joke's funny if they're laughing with you, and it's not funny if they're laughing at you. You know what I mean? So it's like, kill off the man and the girl takes over. It's a good plot move if it's done with good intentions. It's a bad plot move if it's done because of this woke culture that just wants to kill all the male characters. So I do understand people's complaints. I get it. But putting that aside, sacrifice. Watching Joel get his head bashed in with a golf club was probably one of the greatest moments in video game history, wasn't it, really, if you think about it? I mean, it pissed a lot of people off, that's for sure. So anyway, Abby kills Joel, goes back to Seattle. Ellie comes for revenge, takes the lesbian girlfriend with her. They're trying to track down Abby, killing people as they go. It turns out lesbian girlfriend is pregnant with some other bloke. He turns up as well, so there's a little bit of emotional conflict there, and it's like, okay, whatever. And then they meet up with Joel's brother. He's there. I mean, the whole thing's stupid because they all go to Seattle separately when they should have all gone together. So I mean, that's just dumb. That's just dumb. But anyway, whatever. Great, like I say, great gameplay, great action sequences, good stuff. And then this goes on and on. Ellie's like killing all of Abby's friends, trying to get hold of Abby. She ends up killing some pregnant girl. And but anyway, her lesbian friend is pregnant, and then these other two blokes there, and they're like, okay, look, we've killed enough of them, we got to go home. Abby gets to live, right? And Ellie's not happy about it, but she says, okay, I'll go along with it. But then Abby catches up with them, kills the bloke, shoots Tom as well, and then there's a face-off between Abby and Ellie, right? And then the game switches, and then you get to play Abby. Okay, and again, a lot of the audience, they didn't like it. Oh my god, blah blah blah, 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 blah. I thought it was I didn't think it was a bad move. It's just, I don't know. I think everyone was pissed off because of all the gayness, and they were pissed off because Joel died, and then it's like, oh, now I've got to play this other female character, and you're just replacing all the men with female characters, and it's like, okay, I mean, I get it, I understand it, but it's interesting to have a game which is basically a clash of two characters fighting against each other, and you get to play both of them, and you get to see both sides of the story. You get to be the antagonist and the protagonist. That's interesting. You get to see the moral greyness, because I mean, while you're watching Ellie fight, Ellie's a bit of a bitch, to be honest with you. You see this bad side of her, because she's got her friends are helping her, and she's like pushing them away, and you know, oh, you're not helping me, and she's got this whole psycho, like she wants to get revenge for Joel, but at the same time, she knows that the people that killed Joel have got a point, because Joel shot up the whole hospital. And she's not explaining to these people that she's immune. She's not explaining the full story of what happens. So she's got this secret, and it's all a bit fucked up and weird. So you see a bad side to her, you know. And then of course you see the bad side of Ellie, but the Abby, sorry. But so you get to play both characters, but the Abby story just doesn't really make much sense. It's not properly fleshed out. Like straight away you're going on patrol with Abby, and there's a pregnant girl there, and it's like, you put a pregnant girl on patrol, like really? That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. Like that's just, yeah, I just can't like believe in this world. I can't believe in a world in which a militia fighting zombies would put a pregnant girl out on patrol. Right, by the way, there's a civil war going on in Seattle. So Abby's group is fighting a bunch of like nature tribalist people who are following some crazy religious cult, and they're shooting people with bows and arrows and stuff like this. So there's a war going on in the background, which I really like. That's a great plot theme or scenario, I guess, to have an emotional conflict between characters and like a war in the background, or a rebellion or something. It's one of the things I really like about Akira. Right, greatest anime ever created. Because you got I can't remember what's his name? Is it Neo? I forget his name, but you know the guy, right, with the red motorbike, and he's in love with the rebel girl, right? She's not interested in him. She's interested in the older guy, but he's in love with her. He doesn't give a damn about the revolution or what's going on or anything. He's just chasing after this girl. But there's all this chaos like in the background, creating this energy, this mood, right, of revolution and change. And I think it's probably the best way to portray those kinds of events. I mean, if it comes to telling the story of a revolution, you can tell it from the point of view of the leaders, or you can tell it from the point of view of people that are caught up in it, and they're not really interested in it. They're interested in their own emotional life, and it's in the background. And I think that's the better way to tell it, to be honest with you. And that's kind of sort of a little bit of what's going on in this story, but it's not properly fleshed out, in my opinion. Because like I said, Abby rejects her family, but there's no reason for her to do it, so it just doesn't make sense. There should have been a prior conflict in order to spur her on, and it's just not properly explained. But anyway, you get to play Abby. There's a whole love affair. Her ex-boyfriend, and he's got somebody else pregnant. He's kind of fed up with the fighting. He wants to run off. She goes AWOL to go and find him and talk. And I don't know, she's confused or upset because she's just got back from killing Joel. And it's also kind of weird, like there's a time distortion. It's like, because these events only happened a few weeks ago, but it seems like it happened months ago. I don't know. They didn't really clear that up. But anyway, point being, she ends up getting caught by the enemy, and they're going to kill her, and she ends up getting rescued by these two kids. One of them who turns out to be a tranny. A girl who they were gonna make her marry, but she wanted to be a warrior instead, so she shaved her head to be a warrior, and they wouldn't accept that, so they were going to kill her. So her or him or whatever and her sister ran away. And just as Abby's going to be executed, the sister gets brought in. She gets her arm smashed up, and then the boy steps in, rescues the both of them, kind of rescues Abby by accident, sort of, because she gets into the fight as well. And then the monsters come in, so they kind of rescue each other, right? So all of a sudden she's with the enemy, and they save her life, she saves their lives, and then she goes back to see her boyfriend. She goes to sleep. She wakes up in the morning, and she feels she's been dreaming about these kids, and she feels bad because she's just left them in the middle of nowhere. So she goes back to help them. This is kind of not really that believable, especially for a like hardcore warrior like this girl is. She's like number one killer for the wolves, which is her group, right? But I mean, I guess you could kind of understand it. But like I said, there would need to be like a prior conflict with her group, her army. And it's just not properly laid out. There's this thing going on with her boyfriend. But I don't know. Anyway, so she goes to help the kids. Brings the girl back. They try to fix the arm. They need the medicine. So she says, okay, I'll go and get medicine. So it's one thing and it's leading on to another. And it's like, okay, they go to get the medicine and they end up fighting a bunch of people and a bunch of monsters. And it turns into a much harder job than it should have been. She ends up getting arrested because she's already gone AWOL. So she's got to break free. So she's really breaking all of her orders now just to save some kid. And it's like, okay, you can kind of go along with it, sort of. And then they fix the kid, save the girl's life, chop her arm off, got the medicine, all good. And then the little tranny kid decides to get on a boat and go off to the island to talk to his mum, because he's worried about his mum, right? Because they think the mum's going to get punished because the kids have run off, right? And this is where this little subplot just goes completely to shit, because that makes no sense at all. Because it just be like, what the fuck? I just saved your life. I saved your sister's life. And now you just stole a boat and you're going off into certain death. And you expect me to rescue you from that as well. You stupid little shit. What the fuck is wrong with you? See what I'm saying? It's just too much. It doesn't make any sense. So she goes to rescue the kid, right, from the island. It's great game, like great gameplay, by the way. I mean, it's exciting. You're going into this dangerous place. They're trying to kill you. You know, it's cool, right? But it's just like, why are you getting entangled with these stupid children and this stupid transgender kid? So they go, right. The transgender kid ends up killing his mum because the mum tries to kill him. Okay, great. And then they're trying to get off the island. They get captured by Abby's team. Abby's trying to explain that the kid saved her life. There's a confusion. One of them gets shot. And so now Abby's flipped. And now she's killing her own teammates. And like I say, it just don't make sense. It don't make sense. It's too much. They would for her to rebel against people that she lived with, worked with, she knows their names, she's eaten with them, she's fought with them, and all of a sudden she's killing them just for the sake of some tranny kid that she met a couple of days ago, right? Who's just caused this massive fight for no reason. It's just too much. It's unbelievable. So like I keep saying, there should have been a prior conflict, a prior serious disagreement, serious something, right? For her to reject everything like that and run off with this scar. That's what they're called, right? So it's just too much. They shouldn't have had the tranny in there, right? And by the way, I don't know what kind of advertisement this is for trannyism, but let's take a look at this kid, right? He can't just get married. She can't just get married. So she ends up running away. She ends up getting her sister's arm broken, right? And chopped off. Okay, so that's a massive disturbance. So now, she's ruined her life. She's ruined her sister's life. That's not enough. So she's got to go back to the flipping island to see the mum. And then the tranny kid kills the mum as well. It's like, what? How much? And then on top of that, the tranny kid turns Abby against her group, and then because they're all away doing all this nonsense, when they get back, and the sister gets killed in the process, right? So the sister's dead now, the mum's dead, Abby's been turned against her entire family, or her entire squad, her community, and then when they get back, Abby's friends have been killed because she's not there, and Ellie turns up and kills them while they're away. So it's like this tranny kid is just an ongoing disaster, and nothing is said, nothing of criticism against this boy, right? Even when they go to rescue the boy from the island, like, nobody says to the boy, what the fuck? Like, how, like, why did you just get on a boat and run off to see your mom? Oh, by the way, you've just killed your mom. Like, the sister doesn't even complain. It's just like, oh, yeah. So, I mean, I guess trannies can do whatever they want, and they're blameless, I guess, is the message of the game. So it's just, like I say, like, you know, the lesbianism, Ellie's lesbianism could have been accepted if there was a reason for it, but they got to double down. They got to put a tranny in there, and the whole plot just goes AWOL because of that, essentially. So that's what happens. Then you got this fight between Abby and Ellie. You play both characters. Abby wins again. She lets Ellie live a second time, right? So again, kind of a moral high ground now for Abby, even though she shouldn't have killed Joel in the first place. But she's let Ellie live twice. It should have been quits. But Ellie goes back, changes her mind, comes after Abby. That time Abby's being captured. She rescues Abby, and then they have the final fight. Ellie gets the upper hand. She's going to kill Abby, and then she sees like she can't do it. She don't want to do it. And she says, just go. And that's the end of it. And it's kind of like it's a good ending. It's a good emotional ending. Like, you've got these two people, they hate each other, they're full of fury to kill each other, and in the end it just dissipates and all the anger's gone, and it's like, just fuck it, like, go away. I don't want to fight you anymore. I don't want to kill you. I don't want this revenge. It's like a rejection of revenge or something like this. So, like I say, well, it's 1 hour and 7 minutes. Like I say, there is a good story there. Underneath, there's a good story. It's just they fucked it. Okay? So there's my little ramble. Man, you may think, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I just spent 40, 50 hours playing these two games and thinking about it, right? So it had to come out. And, yeah, man. Yeah. There's a good story underneath there. They just needed to clean it up and make it work. And apart from that, great game. Enjoyed it. Good gameplay. Good stuff. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Right, hello everyone. I've just been thinking about this. Just listen to what I wrote. What I said, and I've been thinking about it. Like, you need to make, it's the Abby character that's the problem here. Okay, let's just get this straight. So they could have fixed her by saying, first of all, they could have made her father innocent. Okay, so maybe the father didn't want to do the surgery, but he was forced to do it, and they ended up getting killed. And then you could have a whole story arc where Abby becomes the super powerful warrior that she is, because she's angry about her father being killed and she wants to get revenge, so she learns how to become a killer. And then she goes and she gets Joel, she kills Joel, but then the revenge feels empty. And you could also have it so she had to disobey orders to go and get her revenge, and then so you could have a whole like story arc where she's used essentially, like she's with this group of people called the Wolves. You have to, if Abby wants to run off with the kid from the other team, you have to make out the Wolves to be evil, to be bad, okay? And she has to be, like I've said this repeatedly already, but she has to be like used by them, and they have to like not care about her. So maybe she goes and kills Joel and comes back, she gets reprimanded for doing that, and then maybe, you know, and then this, that, and the other happens. She escapes, she gets rescued by the Scars, and then finally she flips. That would make sense. You'd need to make out the leader of the wolves to be a bad person, a manipulative person, who wants war, and who wants to continue the struggle against the Scars, right? And he needs to continue the struggle against the Scars because that kind of reinforces his position of power. And you need to make Abby, you need to really emphasize the fact that she's just fed up with fighting, right? And then that would work. That would work. And then she could run off with the little kid, and yeah, you know, maybe yeah, her surrogate, you know, scrap the whole transgender thing. It could be like her surrogate son or something like that, and that could work. And then you have a really good story. And the central theme would be a rejection of violence, because that's really what the story is about. That's the conclusion: a rejection of revenge, and a rejection of violence in general, and a rejection of the endless cycle of violence, because that's the end conclusion of the story. As you know, Ellie fights Abby, she finally gets her, she's about to kill her, and then she lets her go, right? Because she remembers Joel, and she's just like, she don't want to do it anymore. And then Abby walks off, and then it's like the cycle of violence is broken, and it's seen to be pointless. So you could have the story of Abby running away from these two groups and their little civil war. That could be part of that, a rejection of violence, an escape. So, I mean, and I think that is kind of what they did. They just faffed it. Anyway, I'm just fucking rambling. Anyway, I don't know. It just interests me. There you go. If you'd have played this game for 40, 50 hours like I did, you'd think about these things too. All right? Okay? All right. Thank you.